Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Ryan Sinclair, and today we're going to be doing the lecture for the policy analysis and how to conduct the policy analysis. From our last lecture, we could see that policy is defined in various ways. Basically, it's anything, any legislation, rule, law that's there to influence the behavior, action, and decisions of people towards specific goals. And then when you throw public health in, you're intending to control the output towards public health. So public health policy intends to balance power between government, private organizations, and people to protect the overall public's health. So you could have government policies that protect public health as well as industry policies that protect public health, or you could have government policies towards industry to protect public health. And the questions there vary, but essentially government will protect the public health by regulating industry. There's a variety of different definitions of policy, and the CDC document that I have linked in the lesson is going to also have its own definition of policy in general. So policy is a law, regulation, procedure, administrative action, incentive, or voluntary practice of governments and other institutions. So it could be a mandatory or voluntary practice. So what we're doing here in this lecture is learning how to do a policy analysis. And this slide goes over the basic sections of policy analysis, and this is also covered in the textbook that accompanies this lecture. So the first thing to do in policy analysis is have the problem statement, and that focuses the problem and potential options, but it should be limited to one sentence. The next one is background. That presents all the factual information that you need to know about what the story is behind the policy development. Is everything necessary there when you're looking at it and you're evaluating your policy background? And also, what's the tone? Are you being influential or not with that background statement? The landscape identifies stakeholders and their views, and it presents all appropriate information. Options, those address the problem statement, and you present different options in terms of pros and cons and what's feasible, what's not feasible. And then recommendations. And in the recommendations, we say that you should only recommend one of the options that you present to keep it simple. So I made a little cheat sheet from the last lesson that we had about the who, what, and where of public health policy. Or in order to analyze it, you need to first understand the policy, because if you don't understand it, you're not going to be able to really analyze it. So I just like to ask, who developed the policy? What can those people do, or what can the policy do? What power does it have? Who influences the enforcements? And who can say what power that the policy has? And then where is the policy actually listed? So in terms of who develops them, it's either the legislative, regulatory, or organizational bodies. So legislative, again, that's either federal, state, or local elected officials. Regulatory would be administrative agencies, federal, state, and local. So those are not elected officials, but staff people. And then organizational, which is like workplaces, schools, districts, colleges. Also, things like organizations could be a mixture between regulatory and private. Some things like the AQMD or the Air Quality Management District, for instance. What can they do? We went over this last time in the last video, but essentially it's interventional, police power, for example, quarantine, for example, or influential with incentives. They can guide behaviors in certain ways. Who influences the policy? So that would be things like the federal government, state and local governments, or interest groups. So that's where we come in here with the case study that I'm bringing to you today. The SB 1000, that is Senate Bill 1000. The case study, it's the Alianza and the CCAEJ groups. Those are the interest groups there. And then where is the policy actually listed? Is it in a constitution, a statute, administrative regulations, or in common law somewhere? So that's kind of the who, what, and where of public health policy, and I wanted to just have this as a cheat sheet for it. So moving on from this, what does a policy evaluation do? Well, it uses research methods to systematically investigate the effectiveness of policy interventions, implementations, and processes. And it determines the policy's merit, worth, and value. So it does all of those things in reference to stakeholders, or in reference to planners, or whoever those stakeholders are, or even the community advocates, to improve the public health, social condition, overall health, and economic conditions. So when an analysis and ultimately an evaluation of policy takes place, there are standards for this, and the book goes over this as well as the CDC framework document that I have for you. Utility, feasibility, propriety, and accuracy are some of those concepts that you should review for that. And then what type of policy analysis are you doing? Well, policy analysis actually on the CDC document comes up here. But what we're doing most of the time for an analysis is a content evaluation. Most of the time in policy, what we have is content evaluation. So again, back to the sections in a policy analysis, you want to have a problem statement, a background, landscape options, and recommendations. I hope this gives you some ideas on how to write a policy analysis.